Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Announcing the Game, where professional public address announcers share their expertise and best practices to help to make you a better public address announcer. I'm Tom Winicky. I've announced at the high school level for many years for football, soccer, field hockey, volleyball, basketball, ice hockey, wrestling, baseball, lacrosse, and track and field. Now, though, I primarily announce at the Division I level at Colgate University of the Patriot League and at Syracuse University of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Here I've announced football, soccer, field hockey, ice hockey, basketball, volleyball, lacrosse, and softball. I also announced the state championships in New York State for football and for girls lacrosse. And for those of you out there familiar with NASPA, the National Association of Sports Public Address Announcers, I was their Public Address Announcer of the Year for 2017. In this episode of Announcing the Game, we'll talk about soccer at both the high school and at the college levels. Now, typically, you'd be expected to be prepared for things like name pronunciations, pregame, in-game, intermission, and post-game announcements, things like goals, assists, cards, and substitutions. Now, we'll go over these so you could be as prepared as possible for your soccer season. You see, my goal whenever I work a game is for when the site supervisor sees me walk in, they think to themselves that they don't have to worry about the public address today. No matter the level, I want them to know that the PA is in good hands and that I'll be prepared and both teams will be treated respectfully. So let's start by talking about your preparation. Luck always favors the prepared. As Branch Rickey of the old Brooklyn Dodgers said, luck is the residue of design. Or my dad's favorite, I'd rather be lucky than good. Now this all starts before you set foot at the game site. Do you know rule number 1 for public address announcers? It's always get the names pronounced correctly. Always. And rule number 2, never break rule number 1. But before we get into the names, we need a roster. At the college level, that's easy. You can find these online on their athletics homepage. Now, some of these rosters will even have audio files attached to them with each player saying their own name and their own hometown. Just look for an ear icon next to each player's name on their online roster. Click on that to hear their names. Now, I'll tell you what, whoever it is in that school's athletic department that made the decision to spend that bit of extra money to add this audio feature should get a big raise. It's not only a huge time saver, it also guarantees that we get the names right. Now, this feature isn't available. You have to hunt down pronunciations yourself. You can do that before game day or at the game site. You can find the SID, the Sports Information Director for soccer, on that college's athletics directory on their website. Find them under Athletics Communications. Give them a call to set up a time before game day to read through their soccer roster with them. Now, if that doesn't work for you, you'll have to get that information on game day. Personally, I like to get at the game site 75 to 90 minutes before game time. Now, you might want to ask, why so early? Well, that's so I can find someone to walk me through their players' names and hometowns before they get into their pregame routine. Now, one bit of advice for college games. Avoid talking with head coaches for pronunciations. Now, they have enough on their plate on game day without us pestering them for name pronunciations. Now, we need to respect their pregame preparation. Find an athletic trainer. The team's sports information director may travel with the team, or an assistant coach as they're setting up cones for pregame warm-up. These people may refer you back to the head coach, and that's fine. Just don't start with the head coach. Now, for high school games, some schools now put their rosters online, and if that's the case, it's easy just to print them off. Now, if they don't, there are a few people you can call to get them. Does your athletic department produce game day programs with both teams' rosters? If they do, a quick call to your athletic department secretary should get you the roster. Now, if they don't, that's fine. You're still making a phone call, just to someone else. That someone else is the other team's athletic department secretary. Now, by calling this person, you can kill two birds with one stone. You not only get an accurate roster, you can also ask them if you could call them back to read through that roster with them. Most of the secretaries will know all the kids on all the rosters, and they'll be more than happy to help you out. Plus, you'll start to build a bit of a good reputation and some goodwill with these other schools. You see, after a few seasons and years go by, they'll begin to see that you're someone who takes what you do seriously. They'll recognize you when you call back the next season and think to themselves, I remember this announcer. I really like how they treat our kids. All of this is all well and good, but there are times when you can't connect with someone ahead of time to go over names. You just have to do it before the game. Now, most high school coaches will be happy to help you with their players' names, but these folks, remember, they have a lot of important things to take care of pregame also. So just be sure to respect their pregame time when you do this. For a high school game, I would shoot to be at the game site 60 to 75 minutes before game time, making sure that I was there as their bus pulled into the facility. I would always have the roster with me as I meet them in the parking lot. I'd introduce myself, welcome them to our facility, and fill them in on our pregame routine. For example, we always set the pregame clock to go to 0 5 minutes before game time, so I'd always fill them in on this particular detail. Then I ask if I could read their roster with them to be sure I have all their kids pronounced correctly. Then, whether it's high school or college, I would always finish by asking them that if they or anyone else hears me mispronounce a player's name, to please find somebody with a walkie-talkie and call up to me and correct me. If I'm in the press box, come over to correct me. If I'm at the table between the benches, I want them to come over and correct it for me. I want to get it right for their kids. Remember, rule number 1 and rule number 2. Now, one other note about obtaining rosters. I never wait to get to the game site before I start looking for a roster. You run the risk of people just not having an extra roster to give you. So it's always best to be prepared and come to the game with your roster already set. Officials are another group that it's a good idea to check in with pregame. Fill them in on the pregame routine. Again, that point about the clock going to 0. Things like the order of a welcome to the facility, the national anthem, starters. Also, let them know if you'll be playing any music. I've always introduced the officials. I've heard them introduced first and also after both teams' starting lineups. Just check with the site supervisor at the high school level or the team's SID or marketing person at the college level. Now, once it's been decided to introduce the officials, especially for high school games, ask them if it's okay with them. I've had some officials say yes and others say no. Now, whether they want their names introduced or not, I always name their professional organization. It just adds some class and respect toward the officials. Now, teams will come out for introducing the starting lineups one of two ways. They'll either come out one at a time as you call them from their benches, or they will use something called the international walkout. Now, this is when the officials lead the starters for both teams out to midfield. Once at midfield, both teams split off in opposite directions, so they end up in one long line with the officials in the middle. Now, they should be lined up in the order that you will introduce them, whether that be numerically or by position. If it's been decided that they'll be introduced numerically, well, that's easy for us. We just read them down the roster numerically. If they like to be introduced by position, we need to find out in what order. Is it from the goal on out, or is it from the forwards back to the keeper? Just something else to make sure of in your pregame preparation. Also, for college matches, I include players' hometowns. Players may come from far away to play college soccer, so saying their hometown over the PA system is a point of pride for them. Now, don't let a foreign hometown that may be difficult to pronounce be an excuse for not announcing hometowns. It's our job to make sure that we find a way to get those pronunciations so we're prepared to say it correctly on game day. You can do a simple online search of the name of that hometown and then add the word newscast to your search queue. Then you get a video of a local newscaster saying the local hometown. Now you know it's been pronounced correctly. For hometowns from overseas, you can still do that online search for that particular town or city. Oftentimes you can find a video of somebody guiding a tour through that town, and they'll often introduce their video by saying that town and that they're touring you through. That'll give you a local person saying the name of that local hometown. Again, you know that now you've pronounced that town correctly and you're prepared for starting lineups. I also refer to our opponent as our guest. Yes, we are trying to beat them on the scoreboard, but they are our guests at our school, whether this be a high school or a college match. I've also mentioned in other videos how to use respectful enthusiasm. Our guests practice in bad weather just like our kids. They do their school work at all hours, and they may even hold down a part-time job just like our kids do. They put in the work off-season just like our kids do. So by announcing them with respectful enthusiasm, whether that be for a starting lineup or for goals and assists, that's the least that we can do. Now, when announcing goals, we still need to be respectful. We certainly can show more enthusiasm when announcing a home team goal, but we certainly don't need to go overboard and say something like, "Lakers goal scored by..." No, we don't go there. You've heard me talk about site supervisors, college SIDs, and marketing people, coaches, and officials. You see, they, along with us, make up a team whose goal it is to put together a smooth running game, enjoyed by everyone. You see, we aren't an entity unto ourselves. Others count on us, and we count on others. So each game goes as smoothly as possible. We count on officials to make their calls in a timely manner. They count on us to make our announcement without stepping on the game action. Marketing at the college level or athletic directors at the high school level count on us to read any scripts at the right time, and we count on them to get us those scripts ahead of time so we can rehearse them. Coaches count on us to get their lineups pronounced correctly and be accurate in any in-game announcements. We rely on coaches to have their teams ready to go at a predetermined time to start those pre-game starting lineups. So we are not announcing a game in a bubble. A lot of people are counting on each other, so each game runs smoothly. So once the game starts, what do we say? For soccer, it's pretty basic. We announce goals, assists, remember only one assist per goal, the time of the goal, cards, and there's a 10-second countdown. Now there are no timeouts in soccer. The game is running time. The clock only stops on a goal, a penalty kick, or a card. For NFHS games, the clock also stops in the last 5 minutes of the second half if the winning team substitutes or if the game is tied and both teams have subs going in. Otherwise, the clock runs. There's no stoppage time that you see in professional soccer. For NCAA games, the clock stops in the last 15 minutes of the second half if subs are made by the winning team or the game is tied and subs go in. Again, there's no stoppage time. Now, we don't necessarily announce this, but just be aware of it. Now, that being said, because of the running clock, we are required to call out a 10-second countdown at the end of the first half and at the end of the game. As part of that countdown, we need to say 0 at the end of that countdown. So keep your eyes on the clock, not the game action. So be sure that what you're saying matches the time on the clock. The officials will go off our voice to determine if a goal is scored in time. That's why it's important for us to say the word 0. For announcing goals and assists, I've gotten used to watching the game through binoculars, especially if we're in a press box. It can be pretty far away. Now the rules are evolving to require larger size for uniform numbers and for contrasting colors. But let's face it, not everybody has done this. I've announced college games where the opponent wore dark green uniforms with black numbers, or a high school game where the home team wore their white jerseys with yellow numbers. Really? Come on, people, a little planning here. If you know you're going to be on television especially, prepare yourself. The bottom line, though, is that we need to be prepared for this eventuality. For a high school game, if you're in the press box, can you ask the athletic director for a spotter between the benches to help call up goals and assists for you? If you're on the field, confirm the goal with the scorekeeper before making your announcement. For a college game, back up in that press box, there will be an SID or someone else there doing live stats online. Confirm with them the goal and any assist. Then I always wait for the game to restart before announcing this information. Now, one habit to get into is to look for possible goal scorers as offensive attacks develop. If the attack is happening down the middle, who is on either side that could get a pass for a possible shot? It helps you pick out numbers. If the attack comes from a wing, who's in the middle of the field that could be in a position to receive a cross pass for a shot on goal? How about a corner kick? Who's taking the corner kick? Who are the offensive players in front of the goal who could score off that corner kick? Now, just like any field sport we announce, learning to look for players in possible scoring positions ahead of time makes it a lot easier to correctly call goals and assists. Now, when announcing goals, I like to add season statistics to my goal announcements. I want to give the player credit not only for that goal, but for all the goals they've scored up to that point in the season. Now, at the college level, you can find this information online on the team's webpage. Some high schools have this information available online, either at the district's athletic webpage or maybe a local newspaper compiles stats. If this information like this isn't readily available, well, that's fine. This isn't something you need to do when announcing goals in a game. I just feel that if it's available, use it, especially if you're announcing league, section, regional, or state championship matches. Now, as for announcing the time of the goal, traditionally the goal is announced in terms of minutes elapsed. For example, if a goal is scored with 20 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock in the first half, you announce the goal as being scored in the 25th minute. Since periods are 45 minutes long, you take 45 minus 20 to say the goal is in the 25th minute. When a goal is scored with 20 minutes and 15 seconds remaining in the second half, you add the 45 minutes from the first half and say that the goal was scored in the 70th minute. You don't need to add the number of seconds in your goal announcement. Now, this may sound a bit confusing at first, and the first time you do it, it sort of is, but it just takes a bit of getting used to. Don't worry. After a game or two, you'll do the math in your hand like you've been doing it all along, and it'll just become second nature. So besides goals and assists, what else is there to announce? Well, it's not a whole lot. You can announce who takes a corner kick. The game stops and lets both teams get set up for that corner. Now that gives you the built-in time to say something like, corner kick for Orchard Park, Bill Smith to take the corner. Cards or something else to announce to the crowd. The game stops and the official calls the offending player over to them to show them the card. You would say something like, yellow card issued to Syracuse's number 12, Robert White, or red card issued to Colgate number 15, James Jones. Yellow cards are cautions. Now, there's many reasons a player could be issued a yellow card. There are no referee signals for each of these reasons, so it's best just to say the player has been issued a yellow card. Something else to be aware of are accumulated yellow cards. When someone gets 5 yellow cards in one season, they are suspended for the remainder of that game and from the next game, including postseason games. Now, admittedly, this is very rare. Now, it is something we need to be aware of if and when it ever gets to that point. Now, one thing to remember, it is not our job to keep track of yellow cards over the course of the season. Again, if it gets to that point, it's someone else's job to let us know. A red card is an ejection. 2 yellow cards in the same game equals a red card. And just like yellow cards, there are many reasons to get a red card. The lead referee won't signal what the specific behavior was, so our announcement again is just to say, red card issued to the Hornets number 12, Jones. Jones has been ejected from tonight's game and the Hornets' next game. Now, we have to keep in mind that this can be a very emotional situation on the field for that player and their teammates. We need to focus our inner Jack Webb and stick to just the facts in our announcement. Keep all emotion out of our voice. What about announcing substitutions? Well, if you're going to announce substitutions for both teams, you need to be working to be as consistent as possible. By that, I mean if you're going to do this, you should work to get every sub in every time for both teams. I say this because sometimes teams will sub multiple players at the same time. So we should have a system in place to announce each substitute accurately as they enter play. Now, if you're in a press box that's, say, on the opposite side of the field from the benches, have a plan in place for someone to call up to you who is coming in for each team. Have a pair of binoculars at the ready in case one is missed or the walkie-talkie doesn't work. Remember what the scouts say, always be prepared. Now, if you don't think that you can do this accurately for every substitution for both teams, then it's best just not to do it at all. The last thing we want to be accused of is announcing names of some kids, but not for others. Also, we should be aware of when substitutions are allowed into a soccer game. They first need to report to the official scorer. Then they can enter play either on their team's corner kick, their team's throw-in, or their team's corner kick. We also need to remember that the opposing team can also sub in with the home team subs if they've checked in on time. Now, other than these few things, we don't announce anything else. Nothing about offsides, goal kicks, or minor fouls. Less is more. Let the game speak for itself. So now it's halftime. Now what? Well, for college games, you may have a few reads from marketing to do, or maybe some kind of fan contest. There may be a youth soccer scrimmage for you to MC. Well, make sure you know this ahead of time so you can be prepared. For a high school match, well, it could be the same. You may have a new sponsor ad that your athletics director wants you to read, or maybe a youth soccer scrimmage happening at halftime. Other than that, take advantage of the downtime. Get something to drink. Remember, water is best. Or use the restroom. Remember the running time on that halftime clock, though. At the high school level, if you're also in charge of music, halftime is usually the only time you get to play something. There aren't stoppages in play at a soccer game like other sports, so if you do music, halftime is your best bet. Now, one note about music. Don't ever play a kid's playlist unless you confirm that it's been screened by an administrator, usually the athletic director. If you come up with your own playlist, a good rule of thumb is, if grandma would be offended by the lyrics, don't play it. Now, I didn't say offended by the style. Go ahead and play classic rock, rap, country, reggae, or something else. Just be careful of the music and the lyrics. Search a song title and add the word lyrics to your search. Then you can see the lyrics on your screen as the song plays. Also, be careful of innuendo in some of the lyrics, whether it's for college or high school, but especially for high school. Try to stick to music that the family across the street from the field won't be offended by. Also, be aware of online music services that just omit the offending word, leaving a blank space in the song. Well, anyone listening to the lyrics can figure out what that deleted word was. That just defeats the purpose of making an effort to play appropriate music. Now, we get to that word that no one ever wants to say out loud. Overtime. According to the NFHS, at the high school level, overtime varies by state association and it can be up to 20 minutes long. Sudden victory may be permitted by state association in the regular season. Postseason tie-breaking procedures are left up to the individual state association. So for high school soccer matches, you're going to need to do a bit of research. At the college level, there is no regular season overtime. If the score is tied at the end of 90 minutes of play, it goes into the books as a tie. Postseason at the college level is different. According to the NCAA, up to 2 10-minute sudden victory periods can be played. If the game is tied after these 2 periods, penalty kicks decide the winner. 5 kicks are taken by each team. After 5 kicks from each team, if one team has more goals, then they are declared the winner. If it's still tied after 5 kicks, penalty kicks continue alternately in the same order until one team has more goals on the same number of kicks. Injuries happen, no matter the sport. Our job during an injury is always the same. We say nothing. The last thing we want to do is interfere with communication on the field related to the injured player, whether that be with coaches, trainers, doctors, or emergency personnel. No talking, no music. Pretty simple. When the injured player leaves the field, either on their own or with assistance, we stay quiet. We don't say that we wish them a quick recovery. Just let the spontaneous applause happen and stay quiet. Soccer is a fall sport. Weather is always a factor. Now, for the most part, games always go on regardless of the weather. Lightning, though, that's another story. Know what your state rules are for lightning delays. Now, I'm in New York State. Our rule is the game must be delayed for 30 minutes for each lightning strike within a certain radius. Whatever the timing is where you're from, be ready with an announcement for what the plan is to evacuate fans. Is the plan to send them to their cars, or is the plan to move everyone inside? We as public address announcers don't make those decisions, but we need to know what they are so we can make the appropriate announcement. Now, for more information on handling situations like these, check out our other free tutorial on emergency situations. You can find that at publicaddress-announcing-the-game. Now the game's over. Now what? Well, you can start with a final score. If it's more than a 4-goal differential, I won't say the final score. That team knows they got beat pretty bad, and they don't need me saying the final score all over again. Plus, I feel that's just a classy way to handle a situation like this. Then go by thanking the fans for attending and supporting both teams. For high school games, think about announcing where both teams have their next game, whether it's home or away. Again, it's just a good show of respect for both teams. Now, for college games, you can announce the home team's next game. If it's on the road, many schools and conferences will televise those games. So if that next game is on the road, how can your fans tune in and stay in touch while they're away? If a local radio station picks up the game, announce how they can tune in. Then announce when the team's next home game is and how they can purchase their tickets. Finally, remind everyone that campus security or the local police are posted outside the field and that all of us associated with, insert your school's name here, ask that you please buckle up and enjoy a safe trip home. So, thanks for tuning in and watching this episode of Announcing the Game. I hope this has made you a bit more comfortable about announcing high school or college soccer. Feel free to browse our website, publicaddressannouncer.org, for more handy resources and all things public address announcing. And also, please send any constructive comments to me at my email address on the screen. You see, we're always looking for feedback as we produce more of these free tutorials. Well, I'm Tom Winnicke, and I look forward to hearing you on the mic.